and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including date and time of this meeting. Please note that a curfew of 11 p.m. is strictly adhered to by the zoning board. No new matter involving an applicant will be started after 10:30 p.m. At 10 p.m., we will make a determination and advise applicants as to whether they will be heard. If the applicant cannot be heard because of the lateness of the hour, the matter will be carried over to a future meeting to be determined by the board at 10 p.m. Roll call, please.
Okay. Sergio Allegra,
Here?
Greg Brown,
Here.
Gary Negritz,
Here.
Diana Rule,
Here.
John Pepitro,
Here.
Isaac Lebo,
Here.
Matthew Bandel,
Here.
Dan Perlman, Michael Pickles.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, now we need to approve the minutes of March the 9th, 2021. Someone please make a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Sergio Allegra,
Yes.
Greg Brown,
Yes.
Gary Negritz,
Yes.
Diana Rule,
Yes.
John Pepitro,
Yes.
Isaac Lebo,
Yes.
Matthew Bandel.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so now is the time for non-agenda items. Are there any board members who would like to make a comment on a matter not on the agenda this evening? There being none. If you are a member of the public and you would like to make a comment on a matter not on the agenda, now is the time. Dylan is going to have to let you into the meeting, so please raise your hand and he'll guide you through the process.
I am showing none.
All right, being none then. So the next thing is we're going to go on to old business. I'm going to recuse myself from the first application. I'm just going to mute my sound and stop the video, but I'll be listening in. So as soon as we're done with that, I'll come back in. Oh, and then one other thing, I do want to make an announcement. Anyone here on the James Tripp matter, which is 33 Bryden Place, that's been carried to April 27, 2021, without further notice, 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. So that's James Tripp is being carried to April 27. On that, I will turn it over to Greg Brown.
Thanks, Sergio. Jane, should we bring them in?
Okay. We need Kathy Benson.
Okay.
Amika Anadu,
Okay.
Jim Stevens,
Okay.
and I think that's it. They'll let me know if there's anybody else.
Welcome. You guys need to enable your video
And the audio.
and
Yeah.
audio. Here we go. So we're just waiting on Mr. Stevens, and then we can go ahead and start. Mr. Stevens, if you're having an issue enabling, can you, Dylan could help you out if you raise your hand.
You just turned on his audio. You just have to turn on your video now.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
There you go.
That's okay. You got the full view.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Just
One
comment.
second, let me just start up. Great. So starting with old business, we have Amika and Morka Anadu. It's an application to permit the construction of 2 window dormer additions to the attic, which will result in a building height of 39 feet, where 30 feet is permitted, a front yard setback of 35.2 feet, where 40 feet is required, a side yard setback of 8.2 feet, where 26 feet is required, a gross building area of 38.5%, 4,347 square feet, where 32%, 3,616.3 square feet, is permitted at 155 Highland Ave, Block 2503, Lot 18, in an R1 zone. This is continued from September 29, 2020, and it was carried from March 9, 2021. So Bruce, has everyone been sworn in before, or do we need to start there?
My notes indicate that architect was sworn in for sure. And I think Ms. Anadu was also. Yes.
Okay, great. So then we have to qualify Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Just for my appearance,
Yes.
James Stevens of Gallo and Gallo appearing for Amika Anadu, and I don't want to mispronounce it, Marika Anadu, 155 Highland Avenue, Ridgewood.
Okay.
This is my first appearance on behalf of the applicants. My understanding is that there's prior testimony, live testimony from Kathy Benson, which I've gone over to some degree, and Mr. Anadu. And I don't want
You are substituting for Kathy Benson?
No, I think Kathy's the architect of record, so she's there in case there's questions. I'm his peer attorney.
Yes.
So, not having been at the September meeting, I think I got as much background without reviewing the minutes as possible. My understanding is that there was testimony as to certain items. I'll take it backwards because I think it became problematic when the surveys were reviewed and it was determined that the approvals, however granted, I think it's 1985, showed a 10-foot side yard. And I think the inquiry was, well, how that happened as the existing Harris, Galliano Harris shows an 8.2. And I provided to, or my client provided to the secretary, and again, documentation I hope that you have available is the old survey from 1983 together with an application from a prior, the one who did the addition. Now, has that not been part of the record, or can I make that part of the record?
You should make it now and
Okay.
give us your proper.
Okay. What we have is, and again, I'm not knowing what's physically there. I'm looking at a Galliano and Harris Associates survey, which I believe was already admitted into evidence. The one I think in question is a survey going back to October 6, 1983, and prepared by Albert Zampanella. And there was an application, or actually a determination, that indicated that it was approved, for the addition was approved, and this is a note: hearing September 25th, 1985, decision October 23rd, 1985, granted for construction of a two-story addition where there would be a side yard of 10 feet, which clearly does not exist, instead of minimum 15 feet. And then it says all other regulations have been complied with. Obviously, from the board's review and apparently the engineer's review, it's 8.2, which is reflected. Maybe Mr. Anadu has been sworn. Maybe Mr. Anadu, can you give us the background how you located this?
Yes, thank you, James. So I took from the last hearing in September 2020. It was clear to me that there was something amiss with what the board had stated, because it just wasn't in our records, right? They stated clearly that there was a 10-foot side yard setback when the application was made in 1985. And so I knew that that was the original footprint of the house. I knew, where the house is today is the original footprint. And so when the application was made in 1983 versus the survey today, which shows 8.2 feet, there were no new structures put up. So something had to be wrong. And so I went to the Bergen survey, Bergen County records. I dug up old surveys. I went to the town office, and I was able to locate the old survey, which to my mind showed an erroneous, what appears to be a 10-foot side yard setback, which isn't consistent with what we've ordered. 2 surveys since we moved into the house in the last 5-6 years, and both have come back consistently at 8.2 feet. And so I think I've submitted that into the records, and that's where we are.
And again, I think other than that, I mean, what we're looking for is obviously the dormer. The 8.2 exists. Obviously, there's a historical problem with that, but certainly was purchased by the applicants in good faith and relying on the accuracy of the survey. So we're not really expanding the envelope of the building in any sense. We're expanding the dormer. Other front yard items exist. So from a physical point of view, we're not really changing a visual look at the property. I think there's an issue with some of the calculations that relate to slope, because I think there's a basement. And again, this may have all been covered. I don't want to reiterate testimony, but I think really the need, and it may have been expressed, is the parties, and Mr. Anadu can articulate this, is you want to hire, there's an area where they have to lower their heads when they go into the existing. And for, just that was how it was built, and it would be a more usable area. And again, I think physically the dormer itself is not going to protrude any more than pretty much what already exists. So from a drive-by, you're really looking at the same thing. And obviously we're asking that there be some, and I think the board probably is there, I hope, that this pretty much is entrenched as far as the 1985 era. So this has existed for 30 some odd years or 20 some odd years. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Again, I think there's an issue with slope that affects calculations, but certainly it provides more usable space without any real intrusion into the neighborhood. And from my understanding, and we had submitted photos. I don't know what those photos are of record. We don't have surrounding photos, but it appears, from my understanding, that it's pretty much consistent with lot size and lot dimensions. So I don't know whether there's any questions that might,
Before,
Go ahead, sorry.
Isaac, just one question, just so we have a clear record. We're looking at a survey from 1983, October 6th, that has a calculation as 10 feet from the side yard. And then we have a survey that is dated 11/11/15 that has the 8.2, and then there's an updated survey dated 3/05/2020. Those are the 3 documents, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Sorry, Isaac. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. So, Mr. Stevens, from the last meeting, I believe one of the biggest issues that came to light was trying to identify what the actual hardship, according to New Jersey land use law is. And so maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit, what the actual hardship is for us, so that we can.
Well, I think what we have, number one, is unusable space that existed. So we've got a property pretty much that is non-functional, but using up square footage. Secondarily, I think some of the calculations, certainly with bulk related, have to do with unique slope. I think properties, if you measured without, the slope, you're going to have the same bulk area. So I think some of the unique characteristics of this property create a hardship that really is not existing with other properties. And again, I think slope is certainly a certain issue, just calculation wise. And again, non-use of the property, which has been there for, since the 50s, or certainly since the addition in 1985. Really, they have a non-functional area that's used space. So I think coming across, as I understand, is really not intrusive and really will benefit the homeowner without intrusion on the surrounding properties. So I don't know whether.
Well, okay, can you just help me understand the slope, I guess? I understand there is some slope that creates an uneven, I guess, setting for the home. And so part of the home is probably higher than the other part. But could you just help me understand where the challenge in it is there so that we.
Well, and again, sort of in terms of bulk calculations, if this were graded in a different way, the 38 point something %, I think, would be much less. And so that's a physical characteristic that existed with the property. Like I said, I think if you have adjoining properties, there's going to be basements and areas that are identical, or maybe, larger, smaller, but would not be calculated the same way. So I think the unique hardship is the slope of the property. And certainly the non-usable space is a hardship, unique
Okay,
to this property.
So because the slope of the property exists, if it was a level property, the basement wouldn't be included in the calculation. Is that what you're saying?
That's what yes.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure about the unusable space. I don't know, Bruce, is that something we can take into consideration for?
Not truly, because what you've got to look at is a hardship that is something that is of a public nature, not of a private nature.
Right.
You've got to just look at the overall, you're working under a C1 variance, not a C2. And the uniqueness is the uniqueness characteristics of the property, not a building. So the slope aspect may or may not be something you can consider because of the basement calculation, but it doesn't pertain to the dormers, that's for sure.
So do you know if we were to take because I didn't do this calculation, if we were to take, because this is new testimony, I guess. If we took the basement out, did you guys prepare anything to let us know what the calculation would have been if the basement was not in the calculations? Because I think we're looking at, let's see here. So there's the height issue, which could potentially pertain to this. The gross building area is one of the items, which it was already significantly over, but that was pre-existing. But you're exacerbating that more by adding onto the dormers. So if you were taking the basement out, I just don't know what difference that would make in the calculation.
The gross building area new with the dormers in it, without the basement level, would be 26%.
Okay.
And the height of the building would probably be significantly lower. I cannot do that off the cuff, but because it's 3 stories basically in the back, that's why it's 39. But it would probably meet code too if it didn't have that slope.
Well, what's the front of the building? What's the height of the structure in the front of the house?
Give me a second.
Is it a downslope from the front to the back? Is that the way?
Yeah, the front of the
okay.
house. The front of the house is fine. The front of the house is. Let's see if I have it on.
The drawing shows 30 feet plus or minus.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I'm working on an old program and it's a little hard for me to get it up. Yeah, the front of the house meets it, the back of the house doesn't. It's
Okay.
because
All
of
right.
the
So
slope of
We
the
just
property.
we discuss it as a hardship that it's somewhat as a benefit to have a walkout basement. I mean, I would not say that that's necessarily a hardship. There are so many benefits to having that walkout basement. You can walk out from your basement straight to your pool, not having to go down to your deck and so forth. I don't think it's something you can just say, oh, this is my hardship. The lot is the lot. My concern is you look at the back of the house, it's a 4-story home. I mean, that's something you have the benefit of a walkout basement. So I don't think you can discount saying, oh, get rid of all that basement.
Okay, in the back of the house, it's 3 stories. I don't know where you get 4. It's 3 stories. It's
And the basement, the
the
basement's a
front,
story.
Right, so it's 3 stories, not 4 stories. It's
You're
3
paying
stories
it
and an attic.
An attic has a window that's going to be, you're asking it to be livable.
No, we're not. We're raising that peak up 2 feet. We're keeping it like that. It's not going to be livable. I've mentioned that
You said
before.
you're raising up the peak. So
We're raising it so that someone can walk down the middle. For like 2 feet, there'll be headroom for someone to walk there as there isn't now. It's just to be able to access the storage in that space.
that was not the testimony we heard previously.
Isn't there a bedroom and a bathroom in the attic?
Yes, that's in the other side of the attic. That is not part of this. We're not
Livable
extending-
attic. You can't like.
So it's a 4th
Okay.
story.
You can't negate
Okay,
it.
it is a livable attic, but it meets the whatever it is, the 1/3, 2/3 of the attic. It's not another story. And we are not adding any habitable space because that piece that we're raising and the dormers are not large enough to be considered as a real space. They don't meet code. They cannot be a bedroom or anything. They're just storage. That is what it is. It'll be that pitch of the roof in the back will just be a little steeper to raise it up to meet the ridge in the front of the house. That's all that we're doing. And adding 2 dormers in the front for some windows.
So I'm saying to me, the purpose of changing that back dormer is to access storage. Is that correct?
Yes. You can speak to the owner about that.
No, I'm just trying to, as was said earlier, what's the hardship for that? What's the justification for that? So, because in the back, you are now raising, there are people who will see the back of your house.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand what the benefit or the hardship or what grounds for that.
Again, it is more functionality internally.
But that's not a hardship. Under the C criteria, that's not a hardship.
Let's. Sorry, Mr. Stevens. Do you want to answer that?
Well, again, I do think it is something that, again, limits the function. I understand that what you're saying is it's not a public intrusion or public hardship. But even aesthetically, I think that it probably would appear better. But I think that's a subjective observation on my part. So just to a certain extent, it is internal.
Okay. Any other board members have questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the architect, Ms. Benson, I'm looking at your most recent drawings that we received here and page A2. And I'm looking at the attic section here, and the bedroom and the bathroom area, are those full freestanding height, 7 feet or more, right to the side walls? Or is that area also some type of peaked interior roofing?
No, the roof goes up, the roof is higher because it's wider there. And there are dormers at the end. And so it's 7 foot wide for about, I'm going to say about 10 feet along that whole, is that right? And I think it's about 10 foot wide along the house, the length of the house. That's the only habitable area in that attic right now.
Well, I'm still unclear here. How much of that bedroom floor space and what is directly opposite that rectangle in the middle, what is that? Is that additional wall space? Is something being covered up in there? Or what is that area?
What, the hatch space in it? That's the space that's 7 foot existing now.
So the bedroom area is full height walls all around, stand up, walk around?
No,
No.
it peaks down where the roof peaks down. That is the only portion of it that's 7 foot high.
All right, so how tall are the walls all around the bedroom? How high? 3, 4, 5, 6 feet? How high are the walls up to where you're getting this peak to your roof now? What kind of standing height do you have next to the walls all around that bedroom and in that bathroom?
I mean, in the bathroom, there really isn't proper standing height, and you really just have the standing height just along the ridge that runs along the bedroom, and maybe that's 2 feet wide or so. It's just enough to.
No, he's
to walk
talking
in.
about the bedroom. You have about 10 foot of standing height, and then it slopes down. I don't know. I don't have the measurements exactly where the wall is built, but it slopes with the roof. And then the roof goes up and there's a peak above that flat area. But it has dormers on the ends. That's why the 7 foot goes out to the ends.
I see.
So that is the habitable area up there. The dormer and the attic space that we're going to peak up, they're not considered habitable. I mean, I guess the dormer would add a little bit to that, but the dormer's not that big. You couldn't use it for anything. And the attic behind, it doesn't meet any kind of code for habitable.
Okay, so Ms. Benson, have you actually seen that part of the house, physically gone into that area, looked around? And can you say if it was part of the original build? Was it added with that addition back in '85?
The back part, the front part with the bedroom is original. I don't know if it was finished when it was built, but that height and stuff is the original house. The back part was probably added at some point. That's not, I'm not 100% sure. I do believe the back was added at some point.
When you say the back, do you mean the bathroom and the bedroom and everything?
No, that's the front. So the front part of the house, the front part that has the 3 bedrooms, if you look on the second floor and the 3 bedrooms.
Yes, I see it.
Then you see the master bedroom. The back of that bedroom up at the top of the stairs probably was the original wall of the house. And then that bedroom, there probably were 4 bedrooms, and they extended the bedroom out to the back to make a master bedroom and a family room downstairs. So that was added at a later time. I don't know when, but that was definitely added to the house. So the attic that was added over that was built at the same pitch as the main house, and because it's much narrower, it doesn't go up that high.
I see.
And it's hit back, and my client would like to make it a gable end and bring that out to get some storage room up in that attic.
I see.
So that is basically it. The main house, we're really not touching, except for the dormers.
All right, well, thank you for that. Part of my difficulty from the beginning of this application has been how the coverage by improvements and the gross building area became as large as they are, some 52% on the coverage by improvements and 37.4. Was most of that a result, or some of that, or can you say how much was a result of that renovation in 85?
I don't know because there's a garage underneath and the basement was probably walkout anyway. So I really don't know what was there before. I don't know if they had a porch out there that, because the kitchen is new too. So I'm not exactly sure.
I understand.
It could have been extended, but I'm gonna say most of that was probably paved. So you say the walkout basement walks out to the driveway. It's not, you're so far from the pool at that point, it really is not connected. Kind of living space to be part of your yard. It's just to the back. So,
Okay. Thank you
yeah.
for that. So,
Sure.
so the current owner, Mr. Anadu, purchased this house with all of these changes made, and what addition and how much everything changed, we don't have any real data on that from your description here, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. It's the way the house is purchased. And the presentation you suggest about the basement contributing to some hardship, I don't concur with that. But I have a question for you, Mr. Anadu. Whatever it is you want to do up in that attic, is it the only place in the entire house that you can do whatever it is you think you want to do? And if you just want to access storage, which you will not be going to, I would think, on any regular basis, do you really need any standing height to get to it?
Yes, thank you. To answer your first question, yes, that's absolutely, we use the garage. The garage is the only other place you could potentially use as storage in the house. So we do use it. So we can't obviously store boxes and toys and things there. So that really is the only unused space in the house now. You know, it's incredibly low, and you know, for me to even get in there, it's extremely difficult. And yeah, that really is the only place that we can that there is existing space that hopefully we can access. You know, so that's the goal.
Okay, so thank you. And then the bedroom that's listed there and the area around that bedroom, all of that area is not enough. You need more storage space than what you already have. Is that what you're saying, us?
No, we have actually used up all of the storage in the bedroom, incredibly, believe it or not. It's already used up, clothes, lots of old things already there. As Kathy testified to, because of the slope, there's already a blower fan. Part of the air conditioning for the house is already up there. And so a huge part of that area is not even accessible. And it's whatever's accessible is already used up. Nobody sleeps there. It's not livable. This is just asking for additional storage, really.
Okay, so now I follow you a little bit better. You've just run out of storage space for all of your belongings and you want more, or access to more by additional construction on the home.
Yeah, it is unused space. You know, with the low pitch and the roof, it is unaccessible at the moment. I think it's probably 4 feet, 4'5", something like that. I'm almost 6 feet tall. So working there or going in there, you know, I have a back issue. I've had lower back problems for a very long time. And so a lot of the store, you know, we've converted parts of the rest of the house to storage. We have stuff on the stairs, in the way, in the master bedroom. And it's a tragedy that there is this unused space that we have that's just fallow, you know, there's nothing there because it's inaccessible.
Thank you, Mr. Anadu. I understand what you're saying, but I categorize it as more of a personal hardship, not a hardship associated with the home and building itself. Thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other board members have any questions?
No.
Okay, great. Seeing none, Mr. Stevens, do you want to sum? You've sort of heard from the board. Do you want to sum up the hardships?
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the sentiment or the distinction that the board is looking at. I mean, is this personal or is this some other physical characteristic of the property? Mr. Anadu just indicated, I mean, effectively not having storage space is going into the garage. This is all affected by the design of the property and probably, for the most part, affected by the history of the property with the slope, which again, we find is the hardship. As far as historical, and I think the board is aware of this, we can't get records. I think there was a destruction of some of the applications, if I'm understand that town history right, back to 85. So what we went from to what it is presently, other than the brief commentary in the 1985 letter, we don't know. But I do think there's a benefit to having fully usable storage space so it doesn't end up somewhere else. So I think in that regard, again, it's certainly a subjective issue, but I think there is a hardship that will continue with this property, whether Mr. Andu is there or someone else is going to require some better design. And I think that is a general benefit and a hardship to the property that continues, whether you're 5'6" or 6'6". So putting stuff where you want to put them affects your entire use of the property, your pool area, whatever items you have. And again, I think that runs with the property. So again, I think it is a hardship to the property.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevens. Before I close the hearing and open it up to board deliberation, we'll go ahead and see if there are any members of the public that want to raise their hand to ask any questions. I'm not seeing any. Dylan, do you see any? No. Okay.
No.
All right. Great. Thanks, Dylan. And then likewise, are there any members of the public that want to make any comments?
I'm showing none.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and close the hearing then, and I will open it up to board discussion and or a motion. Sorry, Bruce, you want to go?
I'd like to just outline and just break it apart for you. The first issue that you raised back in September of 2020, when this was presented, pertains to the disparity in the setbacks, the 8.2 to the 10 feet. I would say to you that based upon the submission of the documents you've received, that what the board would make a finding of in all likelihood is that the survey of October 6, 1983 was an error. It wouldn't be the first time that a surveyor made a Scribner's error on a survey, and that's what this would be, because you have an original house that was shown as 10 feet there. That original house has no additions to it for as it pertains to that setback in the front where it is at 8.2. Yes, there was an addition built to the back, but the original house was 8.2, and it was probably 8.2 on October the 6th of 1983. So I think the issue that you had as to how did that get there is based upon the fact that there was an error with surveys. So that has nothing to do with the variance, but it was a question you raised. So I think you can document that and confirm that the 8.2 is a pre-existing non-conforming condition. As far as the aspect pertaining to variances being requested, that's for you to deliberate. The applicant is proposing that the variance relief is warranted under NJSA 40:55B-70, a C1. You know the criteria for a C1, and that's what you have to look at in evaluating the application.
Thank you, Bruce. For any motion that we make, do we need to make separate motions to document the 8.2
No,
is correct, or can we do it in this?
I think you could. That's a very good point. You could say right now that based upon the proffers that were made by the applicant regarding the disparity in the surveys and what exists there now, and that the building that was there in 1983 has not changed as far as the front setback is concerned, the side yard is setback to the front of the house, that it is a nonconformity. You could make that in the form of a motion, and then we've got that finding of fact. That would be number one.
Okay. Would
Somebody
someone
move
like?
that?
Yeah, how about I'll make that motion for that
Need a-
finding of fact.
Need a second?
With transparency on the third.
Bruce, this is Matt. I second.
Roll call, Jane?
All right, Greg Brown,
Yes.
Gary Negritz,
Yes.
Diana Rule,
Yes.
John Pepitro,
Yes.
Isaac Lebo,
Yes.
Matthew Bandel.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. So that passes. Thank you. Okay, so opening it back up to board discussion on the variance request. I'm happy to hear a motion. I will state just for the record that I do not believe the applicant has met the burden of proof under C1 for the variance relief requested.
I'm just going to bring up a couple of things. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember the first time we discussed this, they were thinking of using it for their music practice for their children up on the third floor.
I listened to the recording today, and that was part of the discussion, was study, like a place for their children to study.
So I feel like this discussion regarding storage sort of flies in line with what they discussed previously.
Well, things have changed too, right? I mean, kids are going back to school. I mean, you know.
Yeah,
you can't-
no, but I'm saying that my concern is the house is currently oversized for the lot.
Right.
Personally, the front two dormers, I'm okay with the front two based on more that the aesthetic benefits to the community outweigh the detriments for me for the front two. The back one, the house is oversized for the lot. And the fact that it does look like a 4-story home from the rear does bother me because you can see it. That's just my concerns.
Diana, I'm of the exact same opinion as you. I think the front would actually look better with the dormers because right now it's just a lot of roof. But the back, I don't see any reason that it should be expanded in any way, just given how much volume of space that takes, and it's just a big wall of structure.
Right.
And I understand that the property is sloped, but I think it's too much to raise anything in the rear of the home. That's my opinion.
I agree, Matthew. And I mean, I think what they've already or what has already been built at some point prior to their ownership would have probably not been approved if it had come in front of the zoning board to begin with. I think what they're asking for right now is very modest. But I agree that there's really not a hardship that's been presented. Maybe we could do a C2 with the front because it's forward facing to the public, and it would improve the aesthetic. Thank you, of the front of the house. But yeah, I'm agreeing. I don't see how the rear, like, we can justify it based off of a C1. It didn't fly.
Mr. Chairman, I concur with your first statement that it doesn't meet the burden of proof for the hardship. And if storage is the issue, the home is more than 5,000 square feet. Find other places for storage. So I would not be in a position to approve the application. Thank you.
Any other comments? Board member
Oh, I
discussion?
think, we could say that, gee, the front dormers might be a C2, but what does the owner say? I mean, is it an all or nothing for him? Maybe we need to ask that
Can I
question.
speak? Am I allowed to
Yeah.
speak?
We can ask a question back. We closed it, but we can ask a question. The question being posed is, the board could render a decision that the front dormers would be acceptable, the rear isn't. And you can make that decision. It would be up to the applicant as to whether they ever wanted to build it or not. So we don't have to really give them an all or nothing. You could just say, this is the only part you would grant.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Greg, do we want to ask that question? I mean, I'm okay with asking that question. I think.
Yeah,
But as Bruce
Sure.
said, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, let's ask.
Okay.
Mr. Anadu, would you be accepting of the board's recommendation for the front dormers and no dormers in the rear?
I would, under the circumstances, I would accept the board's decision. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
so what
All right.
we'll say is, since that's the tenor of the board, that the applicant's consenting to a modification to the relief being sought.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the front dormers only, based on a C2 variance, that the front dormers will add to the public benefit through, curb appeal and visual look throughout the neighborhood.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Bruce, do you need
Okay.
anything additional for that motion?
That will do it.
Great.
Gary was the second.
Yes.
yes,
Jane,
Thank
roll
you.
call?
Okay. Greg Brown,
No.
Gary Negritz,
yes,
Diana Rule,
Yes,
John Pepitro,
No,
Isaac Lebo,
Yes.
Matthew Bandel.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
4-2, it carries.
great, yep. You're approved, Mr. Anadu, for the
Thank you.
dormer.
Modified relief.
Thank you very much.
Great, so we can draft this with Bruce. They're gonna have to submit new building plans and everything, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Benson and
Thank you.
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, did we lose Sergio, actually? It looks like we did.
Yes,
Like
we
it,
did.
yeah.
I'll bring him back in.
Okay. So while Sergio's coming in, next application is going to be John and Meredith Sullivan. Jane, can we make sure
Yeah, okay. So
bring
we
them in
need,
at the same time?
I'm going to be
Roger.
recused from this application, so I'm going to step away for a little bit and I'll come back in probably about 15 minutes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lebo. All right, Sergio, are you back?
Dylan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You just have to turn on your video.
All right,
There you
all
go.
right, start video. I should know this by now.
all right, and we need Roger Schlitt.
I switched computers. So we're back.
Okay, bring in Roger.
Okay, everybody is here. Sergio, you want to go?
Yeah, great. Before I do, I just want to, anybody who joined on the James Tripp matter, I announced this earlier. James Tripp, 33 Bryden Place, that's being carried to April 27th, 2021, 7:30 p.m. via Zoom without further notice. Next, we're going to move on to the matter of John and Meredith Sullivan. It's an application to permit the construction of a two-story addition with a side and front porch, which would result in a front yard setback of 42.5 feet to the porch and 39.5 feet to the steps where 45 feet is required. Total coverage by above-grade structures of 21.9%, where 20% is permitted, and coverage by above-grade structures within 140 feet of the front lot line of 22.8%, where 20% is required. at 409 Colonial Road, block 3605, lot 21, in an R2 zone. This is being continued from March 9th, 2021 without further notice. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sarah Cho, I'm going to recuse myself.
Yeah, so let the record reflect that Diana Rule and Isaac Lebo are recusing themselves.
All right, so just so you're aware, there's 5 members that are eligible for this one. Because I think Michael was absent last time, so it's to the other 5 that are left.
So Mr. Schlick, the question to you being, do you want to proceed with a 5-member board?
How many are we missing from last hearing?
1, Daniel was here last time.
So, John, do you understand that we're down 1 member? Would you like to proceed?
Yes.
And John, it's actually, just so you know, it's really, we could get Michael to listen to it and you could have up to 7 next time. It's absolutely your call as to whether or not you want to proceed with 5.
And just since it is, we're at 5, well, I guess it doesn't matter. There's no tie, forget it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Dylan,
I
can
think
you, sir, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think we're comfortable proceeding.
Okay. Dylan, can you share my screen?
You have the availability to share. You're good.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to walk you through the revisions that we made based on the board's comments from 2 weeks ago. We addressed, I believe, all the board's comments and additional reductions of the proposed project as well. So I'd like to walk you through those.
All right, just let's place on the record the plan that you are working from so that we are all very clear.
We are working on a plan dated 3/12/2021.
Thank you.
Drawings V1, V2, and V3. Is that good, Bruce?
That's good. Yep.
Okay. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we did a list of the things, the revisions that took place since the last hearing. I'll walk you through each one in plan and elevation, and I'll just show you. Then I'll go through the zoning implications or reductions of coverage and increased setbacks for each. So number 1, we reduced the front porch to 7 feet. Previously it was 9 feet, so we brought it back 2 feet. And we looked for other ways to reduce the lot coverage. So we reduced the width of these stairs from 8'5" to 7'8". So the front porch got smaller in depth, and the steps. I think the board and we all agreed that it looked best as a full porch, similar to the 15 or 16 other examples I'd shown last hearing in neighboring properties. So we did not go to a 3/4 porch because I felt like there was a consensus that we all liked the symmetry of the covered porch. So those are the first 2 changes.
Mr. Schlick, just to interrupt a second, is it correct also that a 7-foot porch is still a functional porch as far as the chair is concerned, or the rocking chair is concerned, right?
Yeah, you're going to be sitting and having your legs out. You wouldn't have a conversation seating. It would all be pretty much facing the street, which is what the Sullivans want to connect to the street.
7 feet is beyond being a decorative porch. It's a functional porch.
Yes.
Thank you.
The third item that we reduced is the set of stairs. It used to be wider. It used to be 6 feet wide, and we reduced it to 4'10". Once you take out the railings, the encroachment of the railings, it gives you about a 3-foot stairwell to carry up groceries and so forth. So we brought it to its minimum width that we feel would still function properly. The fifth item is that the porch, the steps used to have a landing that connected to the sunroom. So we removed this little area here, again, to reduce lot coverage. Then in the rear, what we did, and I'll show you in an elevation, is we eliminated the raised porch and revised it to a covered patio on grade. So what that did is it eliminated these stairs that were used to get off of the raised porch that Gary was questioning the size of. So now they are gone because you can just walk off the patio. The porch itself, we brought in this dimension. It used to extend out 7 foot 10 and a half. We brought that to 4 foot 5. So we've eliminated the stairs. We reduced area back here, and we reduced area here. So what that did was it created a common dimension from the master bedroom above, this dashed line, and acts as like a skirt roof that I feel architecturally kind of anchors and buffers the cantilevered master bed. So I think the roof itself helps, and I'll show you in a minute in the elevation, rather than having this master bed, which is a legal improvement. It's not part of the lot coverage equation. Rather than having it just cantilever out with a column, I believe the porch, what I call a skirt roof, actually helps kind of anchor that. Nothing really changed on the second floor. So what this did was it increased the setback off of Colonial Road. This is the 42.5, and the steps were set back even further, 2 feet. So this came back 2 feet off the street. So I think we addressed all the board's comments. We reduced everything basically that was involved with the variance. So the net result is we're requesting a setback of 42.5 feet to the porch. Now, typically in the village, 40 feet is the common front yard setback. But due to the fact that Colonial is 40 feet wide, it's a deficient right of way. It's increased by, the setback is increased by 5 feet. So, you know, we're greater than most setbacks in town, but due to the road width, we're at 42.5, which is actually 2.5 feet further off the curb line or off the property line than a 40-foot setback. And there's, in my opinion, there's plenty of open space and air in regards to the encroachment of 2.5 feet and the lot coverage as well, with the front yard being this open and expansive. And lastly, you know, the porch, it is a porch, so it's an open structure. So let me go to the elevations. So we kept the front porch as it looked from the front elevation, but it just reduced in depth. These steps got narrower. We brought them in as much as we could before we start to kind of overlap the side lights of the door, but it did reduce the width there. This is the set of steps in the mudroom that we narrowed down and got rid of the porch area here. So this is a fairly minimal set of steps. And then what was up here being a covered porch, we brought the patio area down to 6 inches off of grade. So it's no longer a porch like the front porch, but it's a patio. And then again, as I mentioned before, this is the master bedroom. So this skirt roof that goes across the back and across the side, I think kind of continues the gambrel architectural style and creates like a buffer for this master bedroom rather than it just being a wall and having a column. And then we reduced, this is where we reduced the depth into the backyard. We brought this in, I think I said 4 feet or 3.5 feet. So the porch used to go out another 3.5 feet. Nothing really changed on this elevation. And then this is a view of the back where the porch, well, porch slash patio, covered patio, is pretty much at grade or 6 inches up. So we had to introduce a set of steps that go into the house. So the net result on the lot coverage is we went down 1.7% over the whole lot. So we're requesting a variance of 21.9 versus 23.6 at the last hearing. And then we're requesting a variance over 140 feet of 22.8, while the last hearing was 24.6. So we really tried hard to kind of tighten this thing up and reduce it to the minimal impact, and also to address all the board's comments. As I testified last hearing, the basis of our variance relief on the front would be a C1A and a C1C due to the fact of the legal position of the house, but the deficient roadway. And then, as discussed last time, I think as agreed, and I showed examples of many porches in just this 3-block area. Our basis of asking for relief for the porch is a flexible C2C variance, knowing that this is a very common architectural element on a lot of homes in Ridgewood, and it's going to enhance the streetscape. So, we feel we've addressed all your comments and went beyond those to try to, get this down to a minimum. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions.
Thank you, Roger. Good presentation. Listen, I agree. You guys went, in my estimation, kind of, I don't want to say above and beyond, but you certainly came back with plans that are evidently reasonable in my estimation. But we're going to open it up for board members to ask any questions that they may have to clarify. So we'll start with Greg.
I don't have any. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Matthew.
Sure, just one question just to make sure I understand. Roger, so if I'm looking at sheet, V1, in the upper left-hand corner, you've got the building coverage for the total lot and the building coverage for the 140. So if on the left-hand side where you're doing the math, so if I look at the numbers correctly, is it correct to you that basically all of the overage on the whole lot could be attributed to the front porch, and almost all of it within the 140 could be attributed to the front porch? Does that sound right?
Yeah, the rear porch is like a 0.5%.
Yeah,
skirt area.
But the rest of it is basically all the front porch.
Yeah, it's the vast majority of the variance is the front porch.
Okay. Then I don't have any questions. I'm in agreement that a flexible C2 makes sense.
All right, Matthew, you read it out there after I'm in agreement, but we'll get to you when we deliberate as well. Jonathan, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Schlitt, I recognize the changes you've made and the effort to reduce it, but I'm still compelled to ask you that you have more than 3% available to you to increase this home to some degree and stay within the 20% percentage that's required for lot coverage, particularly within the first 140 feet. But that is not enough and you want more. In your calculations here, could you have stayed within and eliminated the variance for lot coverage, but still provided adequate, useful room space for the applicant, and particularly considering how large that front porch is? That's another item that concerns me. Why do you want to go across the entire front of the porch and eat up so much coverage as opposed to living space?
Well, I think the client can answer that, because there was definitely, a thought to that. But in my opinion, the front porch is as narrow as it can be before it becomes non-functional, what we call, Disney World, where you can't really sit out there, but it looks like a porch. And I think the majority of the board last 2 weeks ago agreed that the symmetry of the porch and the balance of it across the whole front of the house was appropriate. So we've really reduced that particular part, I think, to a point where if we go any further, it's just not going to be functional, or it's going to be aesthetically displeasing. In the back,
and this happened by the change. It wasn't by design. I'm not going to take credit for this, but when we reduced it and it became like this skirt roof, it really helped anchor this illegal, not illegal, but legal master bedroom addition. So it's what we're really asking for is this skirt roof that goes around. If I were to eliminate the skirt roof, I think the neighbors would have a more displeasing architectural solution facing their house. So we felt, there's a balance between architectural benefit and variance request. Obviously, if we could be no variances, we wouldn't be here this evening, but we feel there's a benefit for both of those roofs, the porch and then skirt roof at the back. So we're here tonight asking for that. And we feel the benefit is the aesthetic result of introducing both of those. So to answer your question, I don't think you could make it any smaller without causing like a negative impact to the result of the design. And I think the Sullivans would like to speak about why they didn't want to make the house bigger.
Well, thank you, Mr. Schlitt. I appreciate that. And while porches are common in Ridgewood, this application is asking to take back all of the additional setback that the house complies with and more for a porch, which is certainly very pleasant, but not essential. Are you suggesting that this home, the front facade of this home is now unattractive and has been for all of its years there, and the only thing that's going to help is to put a full front porch on and take back all of that setback?
Well, can you see my screen?
I see it, yes.
So if I were to critique this elevation, I think the left door, the front door to the left is very awkward. And this small gable roof and steps that come out, it just doesn't balance itself against the main house. And then this roof, the little gambrel roof on the top, which we eliminated, I feel like this house kind of leans to the left. It doesn't feel, I don't want to say the word balanced, but it just draws your eye to the left. So by centering the door and balancing out the roof and then the porch, I think symmetry creates, a sense of balance and beauty. And the client was looking for that. And I know some of the board members felt, because we did talk about going to a 3/4 porch, but it seemed to be a consensus that the full porch was a better solution to the street if we were able to reduce its depth. So I think from this picture here to what we're proposing is a definite improvement, to answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Schlitt. Can you say whether that change there over the front door, that little peak and what's directly above it, was that part of the original house or added on? Can you say that? Can you make that statement?
It walks right into the living room, so it's...
No, I don't mean the interior. I mean that peak over the front door. Was that originally with the house built and that directly above it, that little barn type roof? Are those additions or part of the original house? Can you say from an architect's perspective?
I don't know. I don't have any historical data.
Okay, then looking at all of that, and I take your input as an architect for the appearance and how it adds or not to the streetscape, could you affect a improvement there with a much smaller arrangement? No porch or some variation of a different entrance and different peak over the door, something substantially different with a lot less lot coverage, and doing so eliminate the variance for the lot coverage.
I think we would still need a variance. It would be less, but I guess a portico would, which is basically a greatly reduced porch where you just basically have, I think it would have to be bigger than this little peak and these little steps. It would look rather undersized if we moved this over and centered it. So architecturally, I think it would be a portico of some width, which would also require a variance. So the variance would go down, but I think we'd still need a variance.
Okay, but you could see another way to make a more attractive front facade here, answering the concerns of the applicant, but not with the full front porch and all the coverage and taking back all of that front setback to the street. So there is an alternative to make a improvement to the front aesthetic value and streetscape and reduce the variance request. That's a possibility for you.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question for Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, in the previous meeting, you suggested that your growing family grew out of your first house. Are you suggesting that your family is growing out of this house with these additions and modifications?
So the only thing I'll say, Jonathan, just to kind of keep this efficient, is, you know, we wouldn't take that as something that we would use in our deliberations if that was proffered as testimony by the applicant. So I don't think it's appropriate for us to ask that as a question. It's just not relevant to our decision. How they're going to use the house, do they have too many kids? Do they have not enough, room for storage? Like, these are things that, we wouldn't want them to proffer to us. So I don't know that we need to ask them that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate the observation. Then I withdraw the question. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Gary Negritz, any questions?
No, I think all the questions that I had have been answered previously.
Thank you. Now we will open it up to members of the public who would like to ask questions of either the architect or the applicants. If you would like to do so, please raise your hand and Dylan will let you into the meeting.
I am not showing any. Oh, wait, I got one. Shows up as TJ. I'm bringing him in right now. Please unmute and turn on your video. Yeah.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so there's two parts to this. One is we ask if the public has any questions, which is what we're doing now. And then subsequent to that, we'll ask if the public wants to make any comments. Is this for questions?
Okay, I have some comments, no questions just yet.
All right, so just stay on the line here. I'm just going to make sure that Dylan doesn't have anybody who wants to ask a question. And if not, we'll just go right to you and you can make your comment.
I'm showing no others.
Okay, so there are no questions. So in order to make a comment, you'll have to get sworn in. And
Just raise your right hand, please.
Can you see my right hand?
No, we can't see it with the background.
Yeah, I think it might take me a minute to get rid of the background. So can you see my hand or no?
No, you fully disappeared.
All right. I'm trying. I'm technology challenged.
There we go. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name and address.
Todd Johnson, and my address is 410 Colonial Road in Ridgewood.
Please proceed.
Sure. So obviously I live on Colonial across the street from the Sullivans, and they have shared the plans with me. And I think they're beautiful. I like everything that they've done. I like the first version. I like the revisions that they've done as well. I think that the front porch would be absolutely beautiful. So I think it would just fit very well with the street. And I think if you just look at the the way the house looks right now versus the proposed changes, I guess I'm struggling with any objections, at least from my perspective. So I'm looking forward to the porch as long as they'll let me sit on it. But I think from aesthetics, I think it would be fantastic. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dylan,
We have two more. Next one is.
anyone else with a question or comment?
Yes, two more. Next one is Rick Phelps. I'm bringing him in. Okay, he's in the bottom left-hand corner.
Oh, can you hear us?
Who's that, me?
Yep.
Okay, hi.
Mr. Phelps, you raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please give your full name and address.
Rick Phelps, 403 Colonial Road.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So I'm the neighbor directly west of the Sullivans, and they've shared the plans with us all along, and we're in kind of full support of it, especially the porch. You know, we've got a really good community of kids around here, and we spend a lot of time out front, and the porch just kind of adds some value to that, where they can actually sit out front and join the community that we have in front of us. So we've got no objections to the plans.
All right, thank you very much. And Dylan, we have one more.
Actually, two more, another one raised. So the next person is Jennifer Carroll. I'm bringing her in.
Can you hear us?
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good. Please proceed by giving us your full name and address.
My name is Phil Carroll, and my address is 391 Colonial Road.
Please proceed.
So I would share in the same sentiment as Todd and Rick. Obviously, we're a few doors down, and the Sullivans have always been transparent with their plans. And I agree with both of them that we approved the originals. We think the adjustments that they've made look wonderful as well. We are in full support of what their plan is, and obviously hope you guys feel the same way. I would just add, I hope there's a seat on the porch next to Todd that I too can sit on as well. So, but we're fully aligned. We think it would be a great enhancement for not only the street, but also the neighborhood as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Was that Gary?
Yes. When you get finished with the public comments, I have one more question for Mr. Schlick.
All right, I think we've got one more public comment.
Fine. I'll wait.
All right, thanks.
I'm bringing her in right now, Ellen McKenna. You need to unmute and turn on your video, please.
Here we go. Hi.
You raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please give your full name and address.
My name is Ellen McKenna, and I live at 416 Colonial Road. And I am almost directly across the street from the Sullivans. I'm next door to Todd, so I'm a little bit diagonal, but right across the street. And I just want to say that, I also think the original plans were aesthetically really, really pleasing. Just having lived across the street from the Sullivans for all these years and watching their kids, play outside and seeing what outdoor type of family they are and how much they love being outside and enjoying their property. They are just like, the All-American, like they are outside kids. And I think that there's so much value to this kind of space for a family like that to be able to enjoy that dimension. And I think that it would add so much to the overall look of the house. I think aesthetically it does match so very well with all the other examples that Roger showed us last week of the integrity of the kind of how many houses around here do have a very similar full front porch, and how pretty it is. I have a dog, I'm walking all around here all the time. And I think it would fit in beautifully and match, just wonderfully with the way the rest of the three, surrounding parallel streets all have very, very similar architectural, design. And I think that the first design was great. I wish they could have that, but whatever, accommodations are also perfectly, we're very, in agreement with what we've seen tonight as well.
All right, thank you very much. Dylan, is that it?
Yes, that was the last one.
All right, so now we'll move on to Gary, who's got some questions.
Roger, the lot coverage is went up 6.1%. And the deck is 267 feet, which leaves another 373 feet, if I did my math right, that came from somewhere else. And so I'm curious where that other 370 feet of lot coverage came from.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. It's the front porch.
I see that, but I'm saying
this back left corner, the mudroom, the master bedroom, and the mudroom stairs, and basically everything that's hatched back here on the left.
well, we've got hatching and double hatching. So if you could be a little more definitive, Roger, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. Here, I'll turn it into. So this is the master. Let me just blow it up. This is the building.
Right.
This means it's 2-story. This means it's 1-story.
Mm-hmm.
So the building itself is compliant, and these steps are compliant. What pushes us over the 20% is this skirt roof and this porch. So yes, it did go up from the existing, and that, we had room to grow because it was at 16.7.
Right.
So the figures you're talking about, the vast majority of it is a legal expansion. What we consider the parts that put us over the edge is the skirt roof and the front porch.
All right, and that skirt roof is how wide, Roger?
It is shown on drawing. It is, here, I can tell you, 1 second. Somewhere around 3 feet, 2'9".
Now, isn't it a fact that a 2-foot overhang roof is not considered part of the ground coverage?
They give you up to 2 feet. Once you go beyond 2 feet,
then you got it all.
Then you have to abide by the setbacks, and you have to add it into lot coverage.
Right. So if that thing was 9 inches smaller all the way around, how many feet would we get out of it?
We got 16 feet here.
So that would give you 16 by, it'd give you 12 feet. 12 square feet.
Yeah, and then you have 18, 19 feet here. So, I mean, you'd still need a variance. It would go down maybe 0.1% or 0.2%.
So that doesn't seem to be accounting for it, Roger. The total growth for 140 feet is 6.1%. And the square footage involved in 6.1% is about 630 square feet. Okay. And so I'm not getting there. I'm still misunderstanding.
This is all new building coverage right here.
So it sounds like you got what you wanted, and then to get the porch, we have to give you a variance. Is that what you're telling me?
The variance is based on the porches, yes. We could build this house we could build out to here, and we could build this mudroom, and the GBA is below the allowable, the height is below, all the setbacks to the house itself are compliant. Our variances are based, our only setback variance is based on the front porch, and our lot coverages are driven by the front porch and the skirt roof, which is in the calculation, this roof.
Yeah, no, I expected you would have it.
Now, to me, this is not even, the length, it's half the width of my arms spread out. But it has such a huge architectural benefit. If you look at, I think the best elevation is the side that faces, here we go. Like this gambrel roof just naturally comes out to this point where we've driven it. So like if I were to cut this part off, the part that you're speaking of, I couldn't accomplish a gambrel roof that mimics the main house. It would have to be a gable, and it would be a box on top of columns. So like I said earlier, this wasn't even planned. This was a result of making the porch smaller from a number standpoint. Then we draw it in plan, then we elevate it, and they all met. Like the roof line met the shape that we were trying to reduce to. So I know you're just trying to carve off more space, but I think it would have like you would lose this gambrel shape, which I think helps architecturally with this legal master bedroom addition. So carving a little bit off, 0.1% or 0.3%, I think is going to have a negative impact on the view of the neighbor, really. And is that going to really, that less square footage of coverage, is that really going to be seen? This is an open patio underneath. So it's hard to balance out, well, it's not hard. I thought it all came together, balancing out a reduction of numbers, but also the architecture kind of met at a very, I thought, successful point. You really have to look at it in elevation. You can't just look at it.
No, I'm trying to understand what's going on, Roger. All right.
This is
that entire overhang, even though you could have 75% of it without having to count it. And I understand why. Not computer, just trying to understand. So now I've got roughly 3 feet times, I don't know, 35 feet. That's another 100 feet. And that really explains that, plus the 267 is literally, that is the overage.
Yes. Yeah, if you take the 92 feet and the 267, that's the overage.
I just wanted to be sure I understood that, Roger. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Gary. Roger, you want to make a closing statement? I know the Sullivans might want to as well.
I just had a question. Is Michael voting tonight?
No, he's not eligible.
Oh, okay.
So it's me, Gary, Greg, Jonathan, and Matthew.
Well, not to repeat myself again, but I do believe we addressed all the questions and concerns that were raised at the last meeting, many coming from Gary. And by eliminating these steps and the rear steps and reducing the back area, and also the depth of the front porch, we basically did what I thought kind of as a group agreed would be a better solution. And we went beyond that. So I feel, as I just mentioned, I thought the revision actually came together in a very successful architectural solution as well as a zoning solution. And I do believe you could apply a C1A and a C1C variance hardship to the front porch, as well as a flexible C2 variance. But if any of the board members don't agree with that, we'd love to hear from you, prior to going to vote. But I'll let the Sullivans make a closing statement.
Thank you for reviewing our application. As we mentioned when we were here last or a few weeks ago, we do have 4 children, 12 and younger. We do plan on staying in the neighborhood, which is why we want to do this to our house. We'd rather make the existing home in the neighborhood we love be usable for us. To walk to school, to walk to town. I literally ran here from lacrosse tryouts to get here for the meeting. And I do think that it's important that you understand that we do want to have usable space in the house to let us live without creating a monstrosity for our neighbors. And I think by having the open air porches down to grade level, at least it's aesthetically pleasing and it gives us space that's not a closed box. And we can use it year long, we hope. And, as some of our neighbors said, the neighborhood is in our yard nonstop. If you drive past our house, there's 1 lacrosse goal, if not 2 in the front yard, which is why we want the front porch. We'll sit out there, we'll watch them play. We'll see the neighbors walking the dog. And we're trying to stay in our home and in our neighborhood. And I know we talked about the number of children we have, and there's 4 of them. And they're young, and they're going to grow, and they're going to get bigger. And we want to be able to stay here and have a beautiful home and live in this neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much.
Can I just ask one quick question of the Sullivans and Roger? I forgot to ask it earlier. I apologize. And if it was covered, are you guys willing to stipulate to a restriction that the porches can never be enclosed?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can we make sure they understand that means no screens even?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we reviewed that.
Okay, just want to be sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Like our neighbor said, we're an outside family. We'd rather be outside than inside.
The screens,
Very active kids.
The screens wouldn't last about a week before the boys went through them.
A hockey puck would go right through it.
All right, is that it, Roger?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, great. The hearing is now closed. All right, so there was, a lot of different testimony from neighbors, which is great, and the Sullivans as well. And I just want to kind of hone in on what really kind of matters, right? Not that your kids don't matter, they absolutely do. My kids, that's what we do it all for. But what we need to do is just decide whether or not meets the criteria, right, for a variance. And quite frankly, we asked them to come back. We told them that the front porch was something that we actually liked. I liked it at 9 feet personally, and I sure as heck like it at 7. It's fine for me. They came back with the side porch reduced. So really what we're asking ourselves is, do we have a problem with the front porch and this roof overhang, which again, in my view, I agree with Roger, makes the house look even better. So it's just really that simple, guys. I'm in favor of it. I'm open to hear anybody else's point of view as well. But if not, if someone else is in favor of it, I'm happy to entertain a motion to approve.
Serge, I think you're correct. And because the overage is really being generated by aesthetics, and those aesthetics do contribute to the streetscape. I think the whole thing has to be a C2. And maybe Mr. Whitaker wants to comment, but I think it's a C2, and I think there's justification for it.
All right, excellent. So do you want to make a motion to that effect?
Yes, I do.
Do we have a second?
This is Matt. I'll second.
All right, great.
Okay, Greg Brown,
Yes.
Gary Negritz,
Yes.
John Pepetro,
No,
Matthew Bandel,
Yes.
Chairman Allegra.
Yes, you're approved. Congratulations, good luck. You're gonna have a crowded porch.
Gary made that motion. Who seconded?
Matthew.
Matthew.
Yeah, okay,
I made it or seconded.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Greg, what do you think? Do you want to take a break now, or do you want to move on to Ketsevich?
I would be into taking 5 minutes just to get something to drink.
All right, everyone, let's come back at 9:15 and we'll start with the Ketsevich matter.
Thanks.
5 minutes.
Stretch. It's September 7:30. So Colonial Road, is that the one that was Cops house?
No.
That's not the one. So this is one that's wrapped around porch.
It was a rack work. Now it's just the front. It's less than 9 feet. Now he's asking for 2.5 feet forgiveness on the front of that. If I don't count the steps, you gotta be able to get in that house no matter what you do. So we reduced the porch. We followed my suggestion to the back. Once I dug into the numbers, I got to really admit that the whole thing is a C2, which is, it benefits the, if you look at.
Well, I remember one of the neighbors said how many.
Well, yeah, well, that's.
Okay, if we could start making our way back. We have, do we have the applicant and their experts on?
Yes. Need Stephen Chepis. Um, and I don't know if Dan, is this Dan, I guess?
Hi. Dan Cassidy should be out there somewhere, and also Nicholas Gravano up there.
All right.
We got Nicholas.
Yeah, it looks like we have Mr. Graviano. We're missing Mr. Katsevich.
So let's bring in.
I'm gonna bring in this Dan. That's
Yeah.
just Dan.
Yeah.
I brought in Dan. He needs to unmute and turn on his video. If this is the right Dan.
Okay. Very good. So to call the meeting back to order, and we're going to continue with new business. This is the matter of Daniel and Margarita Katsevich. It's an application to permit the construction of a 2.5-story addition, front porch, and rear deck, which would result in a front yard setback of 7.5 feet to the porch, where 40 feet is required at 244 Ackerman Avenue, block 2313, lot 4 in the R2 zone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
My name is Stephen Shepis. I'm an attorney. I'm here on behalf of the property owners, Dan and Margarita Katsevich. They're the owners of the property at 244 Ackerman Avenue, and they're petitioning this board for a variance relative to front yard setback. They're proposing the expansion enhancement of the existing house. The house is rather small and kind of outdated. There's also a dilapidated garage on the property, which is proposed to be demolished, and a new freestanding garage to be constructed. The proposal meets with all of the zoning ordinance requirements except for one, front yard setback. The house as it exists today is within the required front yard setback of Ackerman Avenue of 40 feet from the edge of the right of way. So in order to conduct the improvements that were proposed, we need to secure relief from this board relative to front yard setback. As I stated in all other regards, the proposal. We have a witness for you tonight, Nicholas Gravano. He's a licensed professional planner. He's familiar with the plans, familiar with the property, familiar with the ordinance and the municipal land use law. So if he's out there somewhere in the midst, oh, there he is. I'd ask that he be sworn, and then if he could give us a presentation.
Counsel, do you have an architect at all to testify, or is it just a planner?
Just the planner. The architect was unavailable to join us, and Mr. Gravano will be able to address this. If there's any other.
Okay. Gravano, if you would raise your right hand. He's on the screen.
Yes, that's me.
You've raised your right hand. Do you promise? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Very good. Mr. Gravano, would you please state your professional credentials on the record for the board and the public?
Yes, my name is Nicholas Graviano. I'm a partner, planner, and designer with Graviano and Gillis Architects and Planners, with a business address of 101 Crawford's Corner Road in Holmdel, New Jersey. I hold a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University, a master's degree in city and regional planning from Rutgers University, and a law degree from the Temple University School of Law, where I received a distinguished class performance in state and local government law. My planning license in the state of New Jersey is valid. I also hold an AICP certification, and I've testified before boards and governing bodies in 16 counties in New Jersey, including numerous municipalities in Bergen County.
Thank you. Any questions by board members or members of the public as it pertains to his credentials as a professional planner? There being none, he can testify in that field and be able to render an opinion in that field. Please proceed.
Thank you, board. Appreciate it. So as you heard in Mr. Shepis's intro, this is an application before you regarding block 2313, lot 4, 244 Ackerman Avenue. I'm sorry, was someone speaking? Okay, I'll continue. It's located at 244 Ackerman Avenue in the R2 zoning district. The parcel is approximately 16,148 square feet. It's an oversized lot. 10,500 square feet is required in this district. It's rather exceptional situation with this lot. The house, which is lawfully existing, is far into the front yard setback. Part of that looks to be due to the historic development pattern, as well as the geometry of the lot, which takes a little bit of a angled nature due to the configuration of the right-of-way on Ackerman and its intersection with Doremus. The applicant is essentially requesting the setbacks that are on the site now. There is a rather small front porch covering the front door.
It's roughly 8 feet in length. What the applicant seeks to do is create the front porch, which is the entire length of the front facade of the house. This is a property where the northerly side is 189 feet and the southerly side is 240 feet, so it's quite a large lot. I will share my screen to show you first the existing conditions of the property. So these were the photographs that the applicant submitted with the application package. On March 7th to 2021, I visited the site and the surrounding area to verify the conditions. I found the property to be similar to what the applicant submitted in the application package. So here you see the house, obviously shows signs of dilapidation, certainly in need of some renovations and other improvements to make it a house that's really befitting of the neighborhood. As I scroll through, you could see the rather rough condition of the house. You'll see all the various facades. I'm moving on to the garage. You'll see the garage is also in bad shape. The applicant seeks to demolish that and build a new 2-car garage, which is conforming to ordinance standards in its place in the rear yard. I'm going to stop this share to show you the proposed plans that were submitted by the applicant.
Mr. Graviano, just as a matter of housekeeping, the photographs that you just reviewed with the board and the public, do they fairly and accurately reflect the condition of the house on the subject property and the surrounding grounds as they exist today?
They certainly do. As I said, I did visit the grounds on March 7th, and the photos match the conditions that I witnessed myself on the site.
Now, they were submitted with the application, but perhaps for housekeeping purposes, no pun intended, we should identify those and mark them as A1. Would that be acceptable?
Yes, all collectively will be marked as A1.
Okay, thank you.
A1.
So this is sheet A1 of the architectural / zoning submission that was submitted by the applicant. It's sheet A1. We'll call this A2. So I just want to zoom in. So here you see the survey of the project with the home superimposed to see what the applicant is doing. In this dashed area, this is the front porch that the applicant is requesting. As I stated, there currently is a front porch. The applicant is keeping with the dimensional depth of that porch along the entire front of the house. This area here where the cursor is shown, that is where the 7.5-foot front yard setback variance is required. However, I would like to note that this is quite a large right-of-way where the right-of-way extends beyond the sidewalk, and there's a grassed area next to the sidewalk. So essentially what you would have with this is you would have this front porch, which would be approximately 20 feet from the curb line. So while it's 7.5 feet from the right-of-way, due to the exceptional nature of the right-of-way in this situation, it's 20 feet from the curb line. I would just like to know, here you have the established development pattern, which the architect took from Google Maps. I was able to verify the building placement when I was out in the area. And the applicant's house is in keeping with the established front yard setback pattern of the neighboring properties, and actually the two houses that are next to it are actually beyond the front yard setback of what the applicant is showing before you this evening. So the applicant's proposal would certainly be something that keeps in line the front yard setbacks of these three houses that are placed at the Y of Ackerman and Doremus. Moving on, the applicant is proposing substantial modifications and additions to the house to make it a house that's certainly befitting of the neighborhood. You'll see the proposed front elevation with the very nicely designed front porch. Here you have a symmetrical house design that's certainly in keeping with the historic nature of the neighborhood, while providing a layout that's certainly in demand for the current homeowner. Here you see the rear elevation, very nice fenestration leading out to a back deck to the rear yard, which is 100+ feet in size. Moving on to A2 of this applicant's submission. We call this A3, which is the second page of the architect's plans. You'll see the existing structure, the dimensions, very small in nature. The house is only 23 feet deep. So the applicant's extension in the rear yard will certainly provide a layout and floor plan that the modern homeowner is accustomed to. One thing I would like to note is that the applicant's property is pushed so far to the front of the property that the rear additions actually encroach into the front yard setback. So the applicant, while has the 7.5 feet in the front, is roughly 36 feet in the back. So the variance for the rear addition is required as well. So that is the applicant's proposal in a nutshell. I'd like to get on to the variance analysis and the variance criteria. In this case, the relief can be granted both under the C1 and C2 criteria. With respect to the C1, the applicant's house being a lawfully existing structure, which has historically extended into the front yard setback to a point where it makes any additions to the property require a variance, certainly meets the C1 criteria by reason of an extraordinary and exceptional situation uniquely affecting this specific piece of property and the lawful structure existing thereon. Strict application of Ridgewood zoning regulations would result in peculiar and exceptional difficulties and undue hardship upon the applicant here. There's certainly no substantial detriment to the public good or substantial impairment of the zone plan or zoning ordinance with this request. And I would like to note that intersection creates a large expanse of asphalt and street right away in front of the applicant's property. On the southern end, there's roughly 50 feet of pavement from curb to curb. And then on the northern end, you have 70 feet of pavement from curb to curb. So the applicant's introduction of this porch is not going to impact, one, the neighbors on the side, because as I stated in previous testimony, it lines up with those structures. And additionally, it's not impacting the neighbors across the street because they're so far away due to the very wide nature of the street right away at that intersection. This relief can also be granted under the C2 criteria. And for the C2 criteria, the applicant does not need to demonstrate hardship. What the applicant must do is show that it relates to a specific piece of property. Here you have an oversized parcel in the R2 district with a lawfully existing structure that is currently placed 13 feet from the right-of-way line, where the current zoning requires 40 feet. The applicant must also show advancement of the municipal land use law. And in this case, the applicant advances purpose A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use of lands, which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And you have a renovation of an existing dilapidated structure, thus promoting the public health, safety, and general welfare by eliminating the potential nuisances that occur from uninhabited and unmaintained properties. Additionally, the addition will be built to modern building codes, providing a safe environment for future residents. It also advances purpose G, to provide sufficient space and appropriate location for a variety of residential uses in order to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. The applicant is not requesting any other variances besides this front yard setback, is meeting all the height, coverage, and other requirements of the village. So the applicant is certainly providing sufficient space and appropriate location for a residential use to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. And then lastly, the applicant's architectural plan certainly promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. Moving on to the negative criteria, there's certainly no substantial impairment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance, with the variances being granted under the C2 criteria as well. So in conclusion, the applicant has a very specific situation related to the existing front yard setback of the property. The variances can be granted under the C1 and C2 criteria without any substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance.
One point I'd ask you, sir, is it fair to say that the front porch is open? It's not enclosed in any way and would remain open?
Yes, the front porch is open and the applicant would agree to not enclosing the front porch nor screening the front porch, similar to the previous application.
Now that you brought that up, could you just briefly touch on the benefits, if any, relative to having a front porch on this house?
Well, you know, there's certainly social and design aspects related to having a front porch. You know, in planning school, we studied how the nation changed when people went from hanging out on the front stoop and to the front porch back to the backyard. And certainly the front porch provides societal benefits to being in tune with your neighbors and having a social environment that's welcoming to the surrounding community. Additionally, from a design standpoint, you know, the porch definitely adds a design aesthetic to this house that's certainly enhanced than if there was not a front porch on the dwelling. I certainly feel that the geometry of the lot, the geometry of the neighboring lots, this house would be in line with the neighboring properties, providing a consistent appearance of a setback on the street, as well as the exceptionally large right-of-way creates a situation where this porch could certainly be accommodated, withstanding the reduced front yard setback depth that the applicant's requesting.
Now, last question for you, sir. In your investigations of the area, did you see homes in the area that had similar front porches?
Yes, this is a neighborhood that has a mixture of, you know, front porches as well as, you know, the minimal covered porch that's there now. Certainly from a design standpoint, I think the full front porch adds a lot to the house.
Okay, I don't have anything further, Mr. Gravier.
Thank you, Mr. Shepis and Mr. Graviano. We'll open up to the board for questions. Maybe I'll just start briefly. There's a lot of foliage and there are two large trees in front of the house currently. I don't know if it's the planner or the applicant who could talk about what's going to happen with those trees. Are they being removed? Are they being replaced with different trees?
You know, perhaps we should have Mr. Katsevich sworn so that he can address any factual questions that come up.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you would raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Again, it was posed by the chairman as to your plans for the two trees in front of the house.
If they will reflect somehow on the construction, we most likely will have to cut them off. If it's special permission needed from the village, I will ask for it.
Right. So if rather than building a porch, you created a slightly larger portico, would you still remove the trees?
It looks like they has to be removed because they overgrow and the roots are already pushing into the house.
I could certainly add to this based on my site visit. I think it would certainly be appropriate for these trees to be removed. And I think a suitable solution would be for the applicant to replant two trees that are more closer to the property boundary, because these trees are really on the house, and I think they do pose some danger to the existing structure as well as the any additions that occur to the structure. So I do think that replacement of these trees is the best solution.
Mr. Graviano, could you put up photo number 2 in our photo array? There's a very good photograph of those trees that are referenced.
Certainly can.
There you go. The next photo. Okay, now, Mr. Graviano, those are the trees I believe that the chair was discussing.
Yes.
So why don't you address those trees?
Yes, these trees are right on the house. I think in any scenario, whether this house would even stay untouched or the applicant's proposal, I certainly think that these trees have to be removed. And I think a better placement would be, further along in the front yard.
Dan, would you have a problem planting 2 new deciduous trees in front of the property?
Not at all. Not at all.
Maybe a maple or something?
As a matter of fact, I will put in, plant the new trees.
All right, so then that'll come before the site plan committee. The reason for the question is, and I agree with you, those trees are probably not doing the foundation any good. They were probably planted way too close to the house. But they do provide cover. And it's a busy street, and it's relatively, I know you say it's a large right of way, but at least that right corner is relatively close to the street and to the sidewalk. And it would be good if approved, that there would be some additional, again, cover. We don't want it just to be open, out in the open. So I'm glad that the applicant agrees. The other question is, and I see that the corner, which is the right of the house, the proposed corner of the front porch is 7.5 feet to the right of way. Do we know how? 2 questions. What is the distance between the current corner of the house to that sidewalk? And what is the proposed distance from the front porch to that sidewalk?
Okay, certainly. I'll put back up the plan. I believe it was A2. Presently, corner to the right of way is 13 feet. The applicant is proposing this 6-foot porch, which is in keeping with the current depth of the existing porch. So it goes from 13 to 7.5.
The question was to the sidewalk.
Yeah, to the right of way.
Oh, to the sidewalk. I'm sorry. To the sidewalks, another like 7.5 feet. So the edge of the porch to the sidewalk would be like 15 feet.
So when you add another 5 to that, it's 20 feet to the house as it exists today, the sidewalk. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, the sidewalk's around 20 feet today.
And then with the porch, it'd be down to?
Be down to like 15 feet.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
I just wanted to follow up on one thing, Sergio, which was you'd mentioned the trees. So if they're cutting the trees down, which provided some type of landscaping. There really wasn't any landscaping in front of that house, from what I can tell. So what I'd like to ask is, if you're building a porch that's closer to the street in the right of way, I'd like to see landscaping go across the entire length of the porch that you're going to be building, to help provide some privacy from the public and to the homeowner as well. Is that something you guys would agree to?
That's a good idea, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
I'm ready right now.
That the applicant is amenable to that request.
What can be done is that if the board sees fit to approve it, a plan would be submitted for the site plan committee to review and approve as it pertains to the landscaping aspect.
Isaac, my only retort to that is that they're at 7.5 feet to the right of way. So
yeah, but the sidewalks where people are walking, right? I mean,
but then what are you going to do? Put a whole hedge that's then 3 feet from the right?
Well, you've got 7.5 to the closest point, so they could get creative.
Yeah, and that's why I asked how close it was to the sidewalk, right? Because when you're walking or driving, you don't know that there's an actual right of way there. It's just grass. But you do, your eye does know where the curb and the sidewalk are. So yeah, that corner will be getting a little close if you start adding hedges. But again, if you're creative enough, and I still think maybe some boxwoods, something would
Yeah.
be better there than nothing.
I have to say, if it's that close to the street and you got no landscaping in front, it's just, it needs to have landscaping. Otherwise, I'm not really in favor of it.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Can we go back to asking what's the hardship of a porch?
Actually,
I'm still stuck on that part to begin with. I understand the pre-existing location of the home, but the porch is not.
well, due to the exceptional configuration of this parcel, anything the applicant does requires a variance.
I understand, but the house, I mean, you're exacerbating a pre-existing condition with the porch.
The porch would therefore be under the C2 criteria, or hardship need not to be required. And the applicant must show that it relates to a specific piece of property, which is an exceptional piece of property. And it advances.
But we're discussing a porch. We're not discussing, oh my goodness, I need a bedroom, or this is a porch.
I understand, and that is certainly a valid
So
question.
it's an aesthetic. It's really nothing else besides aesthetic. Ackerman is an extremely busy street.
Yes.
I mean, sitting on that porch, you're going to be breathing in fumes. So it's an aesthetic. I just don't understand how we're exacerbating a pre-existing condition and what the benefits to the community are.
Nicholas, could you jump over to the front elevation so we can see what's
certainly.
Okay, so why don't you talk a little bit about the roof lines and then the way.
No, it's a beautiful house. The design is beautiful. We can achieve beauty not 7 feet from or even 10 feet from the property, from the sidewalk.
I would point out the porch is only 6 feet deep. It's not a porch where you put like a porch swing. I think primarily, and Nicholas, correct me if I'm wrong, it's for aesthetics and also for the ability of people to get to the house and not be in the rain, but primarily it's for aesthetics and to give the house a little character. Is that fair to say?
It promotes a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement, which certainly advances the C2 side of the argument of this application. But I think in this circumstance, and I'm not saying this configuration is acceptable in every circumstance, but here you have surrounding homes in line with this house, which are even, appearing closer to the.
Only the homes to the left are in line. The home to the right is not.
But that is also on the jog of the road for Ackerman. That takes on a different situation there. I understand your concerns, but in this situation, giving the historic setbacks of those three homes, plus the wide right of way on Ackerman and Doremus, I do feel that this house, that this porch can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or impairment of the zone plan or zoning ordinance due to the extreme.
But let's disregard the right of way. What's the distance to the sidewalk?
The distance to the sidewalk, let me go back to that. The distance to the sidewalk is approximately 15 feet.
What is the zoning requirement?
The zoning requirement is 40 feet.
And the house is currently?
The house is currently 13 feet, but it still does have a 6-foot porch that is on the house.
But not on that corner.
Not on that corner, correct.
No, so I'm saying if you retained the front porch as is, you had a beautiful design with a beautiful front porch, you would not be exacerbating pre-existing condition.
That is correct, although I feel that this porch creates a nicer design aesthetic than if you just had.
Okay, so we're back to the C2.
Yeah, there are C1 and C2 elements of this. The rear addition still requires the C1 because it's still in the front yard setback.
Yes, that I understood.
Okay.
I'm sorry. As it pertains to just the porch.
As it pertains to the
C2.
porch, I do think you could make arguments under both criteria. However, I do think that the design aesthetic of the porch is crucial to, promoting a desirable visual environment and a nice streetscape.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do. But I preface the questions by saying they're going to be about the site plan here on page A1, and then the proposed elevation changes, the front and the side. So I would have asked them of the architect, and I am asking now if such questions can be answered by Mr. Graviano or Mr. Shepis. Or do we need an architect to qualify why the dimensions of the home and positions and those items I'm going to ask about are the way they are? Can either of the two men answer them? Mr. Whitaker, maybe you could answer that for me before I ask.
The planner certainly has the ability to make comments from a planning perspective as it pertains to the plans proposed and presented. And the planner has the ability to read the plans and explain them to you.
Okay, good. All right, then I can ask.
But realize the request being made pertains to the porch. The rest of it, as the planners testified to, does not require variance relief.
Well, one question I have is a curiosity about the placement of items on the plan. May I ask that, or would that be?
Well, if it's relevant, go ahead, ask the question, and we'll determine if it's relevant or not.
Okay, very good. At the moment, the existing garage is some 40 feet back from the house. And the site plan here moves it all the way to the furthest corner of the setback line for the left side and rear yard, more than 80 feet by the approximate measurement on this. Why is it so far back from the house?
That's certainly a good question and a good observation, and that was done in order for the applicant to conform to the village's zoning ordinance requirements for placement of coverage within 140 feet. So that was specifically done to conform to ordinance requirements and eliminate the need for a variance. So the only variance that the applicant is requesting this evening is the front yard setback variance.
Okay, so you move the garage back to get more latitude on the lot coverage.
Within 140 feet, yes.
Yeah, within the 140 feet. Okay, then also now the front elevation, you stated the existing is about 33 feet. It's becoming quite wide now, some 15 feet more, maybe approximately, to almost, well, more than 40 feet wide. Why so wide?
Well, John, that would be irrelevant because if it were not for the porch, they would be building this house without ever coming to the zoning board.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the qualification, Mr. Whitaker. Well, then, in that case, just that's all the questions I have, and I'll make comments at a later time when they're called for by the chairman. Thank you.
Jonathan, anyone else? Matthew?
Yeah, I have a question for the planner. So in weighing the benefit to the detriment, how do you consider, if at all, the safety of that area? It's a fairly busy street, and being, people being 7.5 feet off the property line, or even 15 feet off the sidewalk, is just very close, especially considering the speed at which cars go down that street. And it's also a challenging intersection as well. And so I'm just, if you can comment on the safety, or if that's considered at all.
I certainly don't have any safety concerns with this configuration. There's, there's areas of the village where there's 0 foot setbacks and things get along just fine. I think it is a porch. It is a situation where there is 7.5 feet of grass between the sidewalk and the property line. So there is some buffering between the street and the proposed porch. And the recommendations for putting trees and landscaping between the house and the porch also provide additional barriers. So I don't have any safety concerns with this configuration.
Okay.
In order to answer that question, I'd also have something I'd ask of Mr. Katsevich.
Yes.
Yeah, Dan, if the board would require some other type of, I want to say, I wouldn't call it a safety feature, but some other type of amenity in the front yard, perhaps either a small fence with maybe you could work some bollards into it or something like that. Would you be amenable to that as well?
I could. I just don't think it's needed. The porch itself is protect the house, so it's like unlikely someone will sit there 24/7. So, and if something happens, I mean, everybody says it's a busy street. I was there so many times. I mean, it's not so busy. There's no trucks. It's mostly like small cars. And again, the porch itself has become as a barrier between the street and the house. If needed to, I can put the bollards or put the trees, plant the trees over there. It's just, I don't know, the bollards aesthetically not gonna look nice. If needed to, I have, and I will have to, I will.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
Gary, you're muted.
Gary,
You're muted.
You can't. Gary, you're on mute. There you go.
I'm unmuted. How's that?
Yes, very good.
Okay. My first question is, where is the property line? I see right-of-way lines. I see dashed lines. I don't see anything that tells me what the property line is. And I don't see an official legal survey in the packet that I received. Maybe it got mislaid. So let's start with that. Where's the front property line?
Okay, I will share the survey that was submitted with the applicant's package. It's also provided on the village's website in relation to this application this evening. So if you'll give me one moment, I'll share that with you.
Well, I have a document that says Katsevich survey, but Gary, you're saying that's not an official survey, or it says Schmidt surveying, and it's dated July 3rd, 2020.
And where is the property line on that survey?
Yeah.
The property line is shown as the center line of Ackerman Avenue.
Right down on the front where the meets and bounds description is, Gary.
In the middle of the public road.
Okay, so he owns all that property in the middle of the road.
So this line is where I'm holding the hand is the right-of-way line.
Right. So that means what? Legally, what does that mean?
It means that Mr. Katsevich owns to that line that says south 021500 east 102.75 feet, which is 24 feet in off the center. So if you actually count what he owns to his front property line, the house as it exists today is 37 feet from the front property line. Front property line being located in the center of the public road.
Then what is legally the right-of-way line mean?
Gary, when the development like this was done many years back, property owners were taken title to the property to many times to almost the center line of a roadway. And then later the town came along either through eminent domain with development, and they created right-of-way lines that went over a person's property. So they have the right, it's like an easement, Gary, to go over the property and use it for public purposes. But in doing that, the ownership and the legal description on a deed never changed. So that's why you will see properties like this in the older sections of any municipality.
And the applicant
in reality, he can never build in the right-of-way.
No, he cannot build in the right of way, but it's land that can be, that he owns and is legally permitted to be calculated for calculation purposes.
Okay.
Could he plant anything in that right of way, or does it have to be clear?
It has to be clear.
Okay.
So now what is the distance then from the right-of-way line? What is the line on the side that says 21 foot? What does that mean? As I look at this layout drawing, I see the addition, the proposed garage, and I see a line on the right side that says 21 foot line.
Let me bring up the plan. We were looking at the survey.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the side yard setback.
The existing one?
Well, it's the required setback.
This is an R2 zone, is it not?
That's the building envelope line.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you, this is an R2 zone.
Yes, Gary, you need two side yards together have to equal 31 feet. So you've got 10 on the left and 21 on the right.
Why?
Because the combined side yards is 33% of the property width.
No, I don't think that's true in an R2 zone.
Well, I go back and check in my ordinance book. I see it on the chart that way. And if it's not, what would it have to do with the front porch?
I guess what it's got to do is where I'm going with this. They are building an addition that is bigger than the original house.
From a zoning standpoint, if the zoning officer permits it, it doesn't come to this board.
He's got a 40-foot setback, so that means that when I look at that house, there's an addition on the right side and in the back corner that needs a variance. Does it not?
That was the question I had earlier, is when this was reviewed by zoning, how the zoning officer determined that the only variance required was the porch.
Well, this drawing doesn't tell me that, sir.
No, I'm saying this, the 2-floor addition to the right and
Yes.
the 2.5 story beyond that. Why doesn't that require a variance?
Gavin, you want to touch on that?
Well, I think one thing I just want to say is the board's only issue here the front porch?
No, my issue is zoning laws and what variances you're asking for.
The applicant is only requesting one variance, which is in deviation of the borough's front yard setback for the R2 district, whereas 7.5 feet is requested due to the corner of the front porch, whereas 40 feet is required.
Okay, but I think we have to acknowledge, do we not, that beyond the front porch, there are other portions of the building that's proposed to be built that violates the front yard setback?
Correct.
If you look at the existing survey, as I stated in my testimony, the back portion of the existing structure is at roughly 36 feet.
So I'm looking at the plans, first page, where the new structure was superimposed on the survey. We see the 40-foot setback line.
I think the point is that there's a lot of new structure.
Yeah, we've heard the testimony about a front porch, but we haven't heard any testimony about the other structures that infringe in the 40-foot setback.
Well, as I stated, the existing house, the back portion, and this house is only 23 feet deep. So there's an existing 13-foot front yard setback. The house is 23 feet deep. So you're at 36 feet. That's in the rear of the existing dwelling. It's really, somewhat of a technicality at this point, but you do have the wraparound on the side and the applicant's addition in the rear of the dwelling.
All right, we're going to take one quick pause here.
Can I
Gary,
my
Gary,
question?
no, hang on. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, that at 10 o'clock, we're going to make a determination whether or not we're going to hear all the applicants. To respect the councilmen's, I just want to take a second here and, basically query the board. Do we think we're going to get to the next application, or should we tell them now that we're going to reschedule?
I don't think you're going to get there.
I would agree, Mr. Chairman. I think this will go on a little bit longer than will allow for another full application to be heard.
That was kind of the once we started going down this road, that's the feeling that I got. If I thought we were going to wrap up anytime soon, I think I would probably let it go a little longer. But Jane, who is on for the councilman matter?
Rocco Orlando and Danielle Konzelman.
So Dylan, can you just bring them in?
Yes. Rocco. And who was the second person?
Danielle Konzelman.
All right. They're coming in.
Good evening. Well, if you've been, I don't know if you've been on. Good evening, Mr. Orlando.
How you doing?
This current application doesn't look like it's going to be finished anytime soon. And even if we were to get you in before 11 o'clock, there's no way we would finish your application. So you have to kind of come back anyway. So I think really the best thing to do is just let's find a mutually convenient date and go from there. So Jane, what do we have?
Okay. It would need to go to April 27.
April
We'll
27th.
make whatever early you have.
So Jane, April 27th is the earliest?
It is, yes.
Okay. So Rocco, Mr. and Mrs. Konzelman, April 27th work for you guys?
It's fine for me.
Yeah, and we can make it if that's the earliest.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
Hey,
sounds like.
Jane, can I ask you a question, Jane? Is there any possibility that if you have a hearing that anybody let you know in advance that they
All right.
may not be here?
Why don't you can carry it to April 13, and then if we have to carry it past that, we will. So you can carry it to April 13.
All right, so we're giving you April 13th kind of penciled in.
Okay.
If we have to carry that again, then we will. But for now, for the record, the Councilman matter, which is 126 Sunset Avenue, that is being carried to April 13th at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. No further notice is required. All right.
Thank
you
you,
for your
Jane.
patience.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Sorry, but I didn't want them hanging out till 11 o'clock.
Very fair.
Okay. Gary, I think you were asking a question.
Yes. The fact that they only asked us for a front porch variance.
No, but that's not true. You misunderstood the testimony. The testimony from Mr. Graviano initially was that the entire house as it exists today is in the front yard setback. And a vast majority of the house that we're proposing requires front yard setback. The board took it upon itself to specifically target in on the porch. But the testimony from the beginning of the hearing has been that the house itself is entirely within the front yard setback. So I respectfully disagree with that analysis, because it's not what the gentleman said. He made it very clear the whole house is in the front yard setback. Only the rear addition will comport with the setback requirement. That's the hardship. So
Now, can I answer you?
That you misunderstood the testimony.
No, I didn't misunderstand, sir. And I could go back to the tape, but let's leave that as it is.
Okay.
That is a pre-existing non-conforming. The house is.
Correct.
If you change anything that is attached to that house that is in the new conforming, non-conforming zone, you need a variance for it.
Correct.
That's my point. So
It's
he's got
absolutely
part
correct.
of the addition, not the porch, but the porch is part of it. The porch is part of it. The addition on the right side of the property is part of it.
Correct.
All right.
You're absolutely correct.
So that's what we are talking about. All right. The variance is required.
Absolutely. You're
All
correct.
right.
Absolutely
And
correct.
my other point was that he is constructing more building than exists on the property today.
That's correct also.
Yes. So if he really wanted it that bad, he could take 7 feet off the front of the existing house and add it on the back. Because with the amount of construction he's doing, he's not living in that house while it's being done.
Correct.
So
Well,
that's
maybe
my
Mr.
comment.
Graviano can touch on that briefly.
This is certainly a scenario where the applicant, if he just went straight back with the house, could certainly eliminate, some of the house that's in the front yard setback. However, due to the placement of the house, I think it'd be a nicer design if the applicant added on to the sides of the house instead of just continuing back with a straight rectangular building to be, more to the letter of the law of the zoning ordinance. But I certainly don't think that's to, the benefit of the community nor the streetscape. And I do think that the presence of other houses with the similar setbacks, certainly does not create a substantial detriment to the public good in this circumstance.
Well, I beg to disagree, and I understand that. But the fact that the house that is currently only 13 feet back from the sidewalk, all right, is only 1 story. It is now going to be closer, and then the house, the original house, is going to be a full 2-story with a roof on top of it. And the zoning in this town said maximum construction within 140 feet, all right, and set back so that mass, we're talking about the mass of the structure now, which is being substantially changed, is now even closer to the street. And that is my point.
All right, so I think we're clear now on what they're asking for. And I mean, quite frankly, I think we were clear from the beginning. There might have been a little bit of miscommunication. I'm not suggesting that they just pull that out now. So yes, they're asking for a variance for essentially everything that you're looking at almost, whether it's the front porch, the right of the house, they're asking for variances. So we need to be comfortable with that. I want to make sure that we get to all board member questions. So let's start. Greg Brown, questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just going off of the discussion that we're having, when you guys were looking at, updating the property for development, when I visited, when you look at the 2 houses that are to the left of the property, if you're looking at it, they both have sort of what I would describe as half front porches, or like 1/4 front porch. So was there any consideration to like sort of pushing the house back a little bit, start and sort of mimicking those 2 houses? So you have a sort of like a half of front porch as you go in, you've got something right there, but you're not coming forward any. That also would allow you to push back some of the house outside of that 140. if you sort of replicated those two other houses.
Well, the front setback of the house is the front setback of the house. The applicant can't change that. It's 13 feet from the right of way.
Right, but you wouldn't be exacerbating it on that one side.
Well, it's getting exacerbated only by the front porch in two locations, which equal, roughly 13 feet aside. No, I'm sorry. It's 8 feet minus 33, 25. So roughly 12 and a half feet per side.
And do you have the measurements of those two other houses? How far their front porch is from the right of way that sits there, the blue one and the yellow one?
I don't have the exact measurements, but based on the aerial photography and mapping, they're certainly pushed forward to, than the applicant's house. The applicant's house is actually recessed from them.
But the street changes. So
the street does change. You are correct.
Right, so the street continues to get wider.
The street gets wired and the street angles in at that point. You are correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Let's see. John, Isaac, I think you had questions. Matthew, did you have questions yet? Were you given the opportunity?
I already asked questions about safety. I'm good.
Thank you. Michael Pickles?
Yeah, I just want to go back and clarify and make sure we're certainly, at least I am understanding, since we've been at this for over an hour, and I think we've gone so far with the porch that we lost track a little bit of where we are. So the first thing, and I thought that the variance issue was addressed earlier, and the answer to that I believe the way you stated it was, almost everything with this house would fall under needing that variance. So essentially we would have to be denying everything based on, this hardship. And therefore what we were focusing on was the porch, because it's the only thing in the front. And other than the fact that we have this anomaly of the 40-foot setback going as it exists now behind the house, that's what we're addressing. Am I correct in understanding that, just to make sure?
That sounds correct.
I think it just would help to share the survey again, just so we see what we're talking about and the difficulties in fully conforming with something per the ordinance. Give me one.
Yeah, so while you're doing that, I just want to make sure we get an opportunity for all board members to ask questions. So, you can provide as much testimony as you like, but I think it's probably all your best interests to have all of the questions asked and answered. So, Mike, do you have any additional questions?
Yes, and just to clarify, because there were different statements made before, the 2.5-story expansion is to the back side of the house. The pictures that you posted and that I've actually pulled up online, I'm looking at a 2-story house, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not talking about a 1-story house that we're now creating a double sized front facing the street. So the physical footprint essentially that is fronting up against the road is roughly the same size now as it will be when it's done. The expansion is in the back.
That is a correct statement.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I think we were confusing ourselves after focusing on the deck so long, and wanted to make sure that I wasn't misinterpreting before. Thank you.
Yes, this solid square is the existing home. You'll see that besides the front porch, which was done for decorative measures and to create a very nice front facade, all of the proposed addition is beyond the front facade of the house. So you have the addition that's on the side and the bulk of the addition, which is in the rear yard of the dwelling.
Right. So the front of the house, other than the porch, we're not adding any additional height to the facade of the front of the house facing the street.
No, the facade is changing, but it's not encroaching more into the street.
No,
The
I
only
mean
thing
like
that's encroaching more
the
to,
height, the height.
the only thing encroaching more to the street is the porch. But the applicant is adding these dormers for a little bit of pizzazz but you know, this is a 2-story dwelling that exists now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
What height are those dormers? And what is, I'm just trying to, I guess Gary brought up a good point that I didn't consider earlier. And so I do have concerns about the massing of the house, 7.5, 13 feet, whatever it might be. It's all non-conforming. So the massing of the house at the front is a concern for me. So the house doesn't seem, what you're presenting looks bigger than what is there now, as far as the front of the house. Am I wrong?
No, there's certainly a modified roof structure. However, this house does conform to all the village's height requirements and is 2.5 stories and a maximum of 30 feet.
Right, I understand that, but none of those houses are coming that are 7.5 feet from the street or from the property line or from the right of way, whatever. They're typically pushed back when they're asking for 30 feet. So again, my concern is you're so close and you're building something straight up and you're actually building it higher.
Let me see one. See if I
can. That was question for it. How much higher is the house going to be on the plan versus the current existing height of the front of the house?
The current house, which is proposed, is only 3 feet higher than the existing house. The existing house is roughly 27 feet in height to the peak of the roof. This proposed house is 30 feet.
How come your plans don't state that? Because I thought I saw, let me go back, but I thought I saw 30 feet for the existing.
It says less than 30. It doesn't say the actual height. It really should.
If you look at page A2 of the architect's plans, it has the existing height and front elevation. A1 contains the present proposed plan and the 30 feet.
Oh, it just says less than 30. Okay.
You can see it on this sheet right here. That's the existing home, 2611.
Yeah.
And then on the A1 of the architect's plans, you have the 29.4 to the peak of the roof. So it's actually, it's a little less than 3 feet. It's probably 2.5 feet.
Yeah, I have some concerns with the fact that you're so close and you're actually going up higher.
I really don't feel that 2.5 feet in this circumstance makes much of a difference.
Well, it does for me. I mean, I think that it's a massing issue, and we have this problem in this town where there's some rather large homes going up, and they look big, you know, and that's very close to the street, very close to the property. People are walking by, people are driving by. It changes the streetscape. So I have an issue with it.
And Diana, I know you had questions earlier, but any follow-ups?
Is there any livable space on the 3rd floor?
No, the above the 2nd floor is a non-habitable attic, which will only be accessed from a pull down.
Great, thank you.
All right, I think that's it for board questions. Obviously, we could always have more later. I want to give the public an opportunity.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Jonathan?
I would have another question or two, if I may, based on what the architect has been, or Mr. Graviano has been stating. I have a couple more questions, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Graviano, you mentioned a little bit earlier that the applicant could have taken away some of the existing house and moved everything further backward. And along those lines, considering the additional width and depth of this property, the oversized nature of the property, was there any consideration to just And in addition to the condition of the house, not lived in, the degradation of the existing home and everything inside of it, rather than make renovations here, was there any thought to moving the entire house further back to comply with the front yard setback, if not completely within it? The depth of this property, as you stated, is some 190 feet on one side and 240 on the other. So all that rear depth plus additional width, working with everything where it is, I cannot help but ask, was there any thought to just raising the entire home and moving it further back within and not having to come to the board for any variances?
No, the house is in a condition that it is salvageable, and I believe that that stance would be a strict application of the village zoning ordinance, which creates an undue hardship upon the developer, who certainly has the right to make improvements and modifications to a lawfully existing structure. Frankly, variances like this are why boards exist. I think the applicant has done a great job of providing a building and an aesthetic that is befitting of the community. I do think it's a better alternative than going straight back in a railroad style with a long, narrow house. However, I hear that that's the board's preference to be a little bit more strict interpretation of the zoning ordinance. It's a matter of interpretation, but to ask the applicant to demolish the house and put it back far is certainly a strict application, which creates an undue hardship.
Mr. Graviona, I'm not asking to do that. I'm suggesting to do that. I've asked if it was considered the width of that buildable area inside the setbacks would accommodate the plans you've now presented. So I only asked if it was considered, rather than going through all these changes and conversations and explanations. But the bigger issue for me here is what another board member mentioned. You are substantially changing the front facade and width that faces the streetscape. It's a sizable expansion, and even though it is within numbers, the zoning numbers, it is the size and scope and the mass of it is substantial. And that's the difficulty I have. There's just too much house now in vertical height and width that's now facing the street, very close to the existing street line, right-of-way line. And that size and mass and scope, that's my stumbling block. Too much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Now is the time for members of the public to ask questions of either the planner or the applicant. If you would like to do so, please raise your hand. Dylan will let you into the meeting.
I'm showing none.
None. All right, before I open it up for public comment,
I just got one. Hold on. Richard Oswald, please unmute and turn on your camera.
Okay. Yeah, there I am.
Good evening, Mr. Oswald.
Yes, Richard Oswald. I live at 140 Bel Air Road. That's the condominium on the corner of Bel Air and Ackerman.
Yes. So before we begin, I just wanted to let you know that right now we're fielding questions, not public comment on this matter. Is this a question?
No, it was not. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, don't leave yet.
Okay.
We will give just give us a minute, and we may be hearing comments. If not, we may be hearing about a different meeting. But just stick around. So, Mr. Shepis, is there any additional testimony to be?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Wait.
Sorry, Sergio. What's the square footage of the front porch?
Give me one moment, please.
Sorry, Sergio.
It's okay.
Sergio, I did get one more hand raised from a Jack Sharkey.
Okay.
The front porch, including the wraparound on the side of the house, is 200 square feet.
Diane, it's referenced on the plan.
No, because I'm trying to figure out if the existing front of the house is 33 feet long and it's 6 feet wide. just the
48
front
square-
is,
There's a little wraparound, right?
Ma'am, it's 48 square feet existing. The applicant's proposing 152 square feet addition to the porch.
okay, when I'm looking at the chart, it said existing front porch is 0.
If you look at the proposed plan, it gives.
I'm just
a
looking at the
dimension-
zoning chart.
Yeah, if you look at the plan, the existing porch is 6 feet deep by 8 feet wide. 48.
But you didn't
square
have it
feet.
in the existing calculation.
Yeah, it's on the site plan. There must be a little.
I know, I'm just looking at the chart.
Yeah, I'm saying there must be an inconsistency there.
Yeah, the chart has to conform with the plan.
Anything else, Diana?
No, so I'd like somebody to calculate really what the size of the front porch. Because then
Well, they
it just calls,
they considered it the front steps. If you see in the chart, the 50 square feet.
Yeah, but you take the 50 square feet down and then you add the porch. You subtract it, you don't trade it.
well, I was just, because it's 33 times 6 is 198, and then you've got 6 by, I don't know how deep it goes around the porch, significantly more than 200.
It goes back about 15 feet.
So the 90.
Because
That's
290 is the
90.
total front porch.
The applicant will get a revised calculation.
Yeah, please do. Thank you. All done, Serge.
Okay, any other board members with final questions?
Yes, one. What's the pitch of the new roof?
Hi, I left and I came back. Am I invited to ask my question?
Mr. Sharkey, hang on 1 second. We've got one board member question, then we'll get right to you. Gary, that was the question on the pitch of the roof?
Yes, the pitch on the roof, the one that goes from the front of the existing house to the back of the addition. So we're talking about the same roof line.
Give me 1 second. I'm looking to see if it's indicated on the plans. The pitch is not indicated.
Could somebody get that for the next meeting, please?
Will do.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Mr. Sharkey,
Hi, yeah, quick intro, and I live at 219 Doremus, so I'm literally directly across the street from this property. And I have a comment, but I'll save it. First, my question is, I thought the conversation on building massing was beautiful, and I think a totally fair concern. Could you show the front elevation? Would it be possible to show the front elevation and just indicate, on the width of the house, how does the new layout compare to the existing? I got clear on height in the conversation, but I'm not clear where the little side porch, there's an existing, porch on the right-hand side looking at the front. And I'm just curious, how does the existing building lay out on the proposed new? I see it there. Okay.
Okay, so to answer your question, the actual current porch extends closer to the street than the than the applicant's proposal, which recesses that portion of the side to give it a little break up, so it doesn't seem like there's a lot of massing on the street. So that was done intentionally to kind of break up the massing, to make it jogged and not to make it be a straight line of building along the streetscape.
Okay, so sorry, Nicholas, that little white box at the south end of the hatched part is existing.
Yeah, this is the existing porch, which will be demolished.
Okay, and so the new width is really just on the plan west, the hatched area. Then that's a porch?
If you look at the front facade, it is part of the first floor program. Kind of incorporates into the design of the front facade.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharkey. Dylan, anyone else have questions from the public?
I am not showing any others.
Okay, so Mr. Shepis, you've been here over an hour on this, right? You've heard comments, you've heard questions couched as comments. I would think that you would know
Yes,
all the
I see
concerns
it.
that
I
we
see
have.
it. You don't have to describe it further. So what we would like to do is we'd like an opportunity to endeavor to modify the plan and address many of the concerns that the board has voiced. So if we could, with the board's consent, carry this to a date in the not too distant future when we can come back before you and hopefully address the concerns that you voiced.
Can we hear the, I think there were some comments by the public. Can we hear that?
No,
tonight?
so we
No?
don't want to hear comments by the public because they're on plans that we're not going to vote on. Right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, so yes, whether it's Mr. Sharkey or I forget the other gentleman's name, if you're a member of the public and you want to make a comment, we're going to carry this matter to a later date. There will be revised plans. You'll have the ability to go to Village Hall or I guess in this case, perhaps just go online and see the revised plans. And at that point, we will take your comments the next meeting. It doesn't make any sense for you to comment on plans that will not be voted on. So Jane, what do we look like for a possible meeting date?
This would be April 27.
Okay, Mr.
April
Shepard,
22nd.
what do we think? April 27th, does that work?
We'll make it work.
And revised plans need to be submitted at least 10 days in advance of April 27th.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have
thank
any questions for
everybody.
us?
No, listen, we appreciate the exchange. Nothing worse than a silent board. If you sat there and stewed the whole night and then voted no, it wouldn't be any fun.
Yeah, that's
So
not
we
us.
appreciate the exchange. Gary, I don't want to mispronounce your last name. I apologize if I got a little uppity. You got to forgive me. I'm zoomed out.
We all are, no problem.
I agree with you most of what you said.
Offer you my apology for the same.
No. Listen, we're going to try and make it work. So we'll see you on the 27th. I thank you for all your courtesies.
Mr. Shepis, one last thing,
Sure.
because the architect wasn't here. Please make sure it's communicated to the architect that we would like the chart, that zoning chart on A1 updated, whether it's the height, whether it's the porch. We'd like the plans to include the pitch of the roof and maybe just have him go through it one more time to make sure we've got everything we need so that we have plans that we could actually vote on.
Understood. We've taken detailed notes all night, so we appreciate all your comments.
All right, excellent.
I do ask that the notice be carried to the board's public meeting of April 27, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. If the board needs an extension of time to act, I consent to an extension of time for that night.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yep, it'll be via Zoom.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
All right, good night.
Thank
you. All right, so let's just go back to the agenda. I think we've got one more thing to do.
Yeah, we have resolutions. We have a resolution here for Bruce Whitaker's contract and resolution, which was voted on in July, but the resolution had never been actually signed. So we need
Just, yeah, it was voted upon. We just need to document the signature of it. It was, I guess, it was a COVID snafu.
Okay.
We had it. It's the same contract as a year ago. We just didn't act upon it. That's all.
Do we need to make a motion? No, right? We just need to take a roll call?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Motion to approve contract for Mr. Whitaker.
Second,
Ira? Sergio?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Diana first. Yes.
Greg Brown?
Yes.
Gary Negritz?
Yes.
Diana Rule?
yes.
John Pepitro?
Yes.
Isaac Lebo?
Yes.
Matthew Bandel?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then we have the resolution for the Blake residence, 259 West Glen. Chairman Allegra?
Yes.
Greg Brown?
Yes.
Gary Negritz?
Yes.
Diana Rule?
Yes.
John Pepitro?
Yes.
Isaac Lebo?
Yes.
Matthew Bandel?
Yes.
And the resolution for 109 Hope Street. Chairman Allegra?
Yes.
Greg Brown?
Yes.
Diana Rule?
Yes.
John Pepitro?
Yes.
Isaac Lebo?
Yes.
Matthew Bandel?
Yes.
Okay. That's it.
All right. Well, motion to adjourn, anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night,
Good
everyone.
evening.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Jane.
night,
Thanks,
guys.
Bruce.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night.
Aye.
Bruce, thanks, Jane.
Good
Take
night,
care.
Jen.
Thanks, Dylan.
Stay well. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
everyone.
All right. Thanks, Dylan.
No problem. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Dylan.